Very much.
We now come to item number 12, which is the recommendations from the Appointments, Performance Review and Value for Money Committee. Is Sally here? I've asked Sally to come to the table. This is dealt with by this committee, but we report our recommendations back to the governing body, and our recommendations from that committee is to approve the terms of reference for two reviews, one into information, communication and technology, and the second into customer services. So, Sally, would you like to... I'll move it formally, I think seconded by Councillor Desley Simpson. If you'd like to talk briefly to it, and then we'll open it up for questions.
Yes, thank you very much. Well, of course, we're seeking to get approval for these terms of reference. And just by way of background, the two new terms of reference are very much follow a standard approach that we've adopted for the previous reviews. If you recall, Three Waters, domestic waste, communications and engagement, investment attraction and global partnerships, and the current reviews which are underway, which are due for tabling at the committee in June for procurement and the Parks and Open Spaces review. So we keep these terms of reference reasonably generic and broad because it allows the team to do a period of discovery to hone effectively the inquiry into areas where the greatest value in its broadest sense, that means obviously, you know, following the four well-beings value is not just simply cost efficiency, but for us to look and hone effectively our review into areas where we feel there are greatest value based on the facts that we discover in the current state evaluation. So these terms of reference are part of what's called the, if you recall, the organisational support component of the long-term plan budget grouping, and it's a very large, a large budget area. It basically includes communications and engagement, procurement, transactional services, finance, legal and human resources, and corporate property. The budget grouping on the whole represents around 4.2 billion in OPEX and 1.3 billion in CAPEX planned over the next 10 years, and has, in terms of both customer services and information, communications and technology, a strong potential group collaborative component, which we'll be looking at, you know, the potential component when we're doing the review. So, as I've said, the scope of the reviews are broadly drafted to enable effectively this flexibility.
Thank you very much. Sally, are there first of all any questions from any councillors? If not, I'll move... Oh, sorry, Councillor Linda Cooper.
Do you think that this strikes the right balance between governance and management in terms of how far governance can reach down into something, and you know, because I always get a bit concerned about undermining you know, your CEO and the executive group in terms of what you're paying them for in the first place, you know, that trust issues level and things like that. So do you think that's comparable anywhere else, or these are comparable? I know it's a different setup and we've got a different system, but we are supposed to run in a business-like way.
Yes, through the chair. It's always a challenge for these reviews to find the right balance between a strategic rather than a tactical review that touches areas of management responsibility rather than essentially, you know, if you like, shareholder or sort of corporate value opportunity. And it basically it requires us to focus in order to avoid basically lifting the veil, if you like, too much on matters of management responsibility. We look at mainly in these reviews the opportunities across the group under Section 17A, which includes those three components of service funding, and governance, as distinct from, getting into detail operations.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Wayne Walker.
Yeah, just got a question. So, is this review looking at ICT, that whole area?
Through the Chair, yes it is.
And I mean, I know that we've gone down this path of using SAP and the like. So my question, looking in hindsight, is around whether or not opportunities for more open platform software and the like may have had merit. Is that sort of thing part of the scope of this report?
Yes, through the Chair, our review of the future will look at essentially what technology strategy exists across the group, and how one of the questions we've got, specific questions, is how is it coping with this, if you like, disruptive technology that's moving increasingly into the cloud.
Okay, so through you, Mr. Chair, I'm very encouraged around that, because when an earlier council was engaged in this process, I raised that question consistently, and it may well be, particularly because of the disruptive technology and much more open source, open platform information available, that we need to go down that direction and be less trapped by some of the contractual obligations we've got.
Thank you. Take that as a comment rather than a question. Councillor Newman.
Yes, thank you, Sally. So the review that relates to group customer services management, the 17A review, 17A is about delivery of services. So, and within the group management, I'm assuming, so this will address all of the CCOs as part of this exercise?
Through the Chair, it does include all the CCOs, both substantive and non-substantive.
Okay, I have a discussion tomorrow with the group manager for customer services at Auckland Transport, which seeks to address what I think are significant customer service blind spots that have been affecting my ward. I wonder, with respect to the review methodology that's set out in attachment A, you're looking at the current state assessment and the options assessment methodology. To what extent is this review able to address some of the wider systemic roadblocks within that particular CCO, whereby there is quite a good interface with the community that contact about concerns in their neighbourhood, relation to transport, concerns elected members raise with Auckland Transport through the elected member liaison. But beyond, and you have a good interface there, so the external face is quite good, but then the internal processes prevent a resolution, because of course it's structured in a way whereby the solution isn't necessarily conducive to what the customer wants, but it's okay from a traffic engineer's perspective. How does that conundrum get addressed through, how do you even get to expose that through the review methodology that's been proposed?
Probably two things of note, Mr. Chairman, in relation to the question, is basically looking at the way they measure customer performance is one of the things that we'll be particularly looking at, and there seems to be a bit of a divide in terms of our current work between customer satisfaction measurement and customer experience measurement. And customer experience measurement is, if you like, the new measurement focus in terms of public sector. So we'll be looking at those things and what they are doing there and how they're performing. And the second one is we are specifically looking at how complaints are being managed and processed and the resolution times for those complaints. So we're testing in relation to public sector best practices how complaints are resolved.
That's a very good answer. Thank you. That's quite enlightening. No further questions. Are there any comments that people want to make? I think it's reasonably straightforward. We've done these before. We're obliged to do them under statute, and there are huge benefits that we can gain from every dollar we spend wisely is a better result for the people we represent. No further comment on it. I'll put the recommendations. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
To the contrary, no. Carried. Item number 13 is Ngāti Pawa, a treaty settlement redress. Councillors, you're aware that that comes under confidential, and this is simply to note
Happy to move,
that there
Mr.
is
Chair.
a confidential report, so I'll move that. Do I have a seconder on that? Seconded by Councillor Clow. No questions or comments. I'll put that recommendation. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
To the contrary, no. Carried. Item number 14 is a summary of information memos and briefings. I'll move the resolution that we receive the summary of the memos and briefings. Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Simpson. All those in favour, please say aye. To the contrary, no. Carried. I'll now move that we move into confidential session on the basis that the information we're about to discuss is subject to an obligation of confidentiality. It's information provided by the Crown to us in confidence on the understanding that the information is negotiation sensitive between the hapu or iwi concerned and the Crown. So do I have a seconder to move into confidentiality? Councillor Darby. I'll move accordingly. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
To the contrary, no. Carried. And could I ask anybody that is not required to be here on council business, please, to leave? I think that has happened already. So let's move directly into paper C1.